All right, hello everyone. Welcome to today's Cathedral webinar live on October 14th, 2025. If it's your first time attending one of our webinars, Cathedral means learning in Creek, and today you'll be learning about strengthening Native teams, the power of team building and development in tribal nations. From Linnell Smith, owner of Black Sheep Insight Consulting and Coaching LLC. My name is Jasmine Raming. I'm the marketing coordinator here at the Native Learning Center, and we are so happy you could join us today. Please follow along as I read the disclaimer out loud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The materials discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. Also displayed here is our copyright infringement law. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar presentation materials are protected by copyright, trademark, and/or trade secret and other intellectual property laws. Before we get started, I want to familiarize you with the learning platform and where things can be found. I have put the links to the PDF of today's slides in the chat. You can also access a copy of the slides as well as access today's webinar recording in the future. By going to the course section here on our platform, any resource items for download are also available within the online courses when you go through the courses pages. Each time you're ready to join one of our webinars moving forward, you will just log in into the website and click the large green banner that will be across the top of the screen, like in this picture. When you first join the webinar, it will prompt you to complete an audio test before joining. Please select the listen-only option for now so we can avoid any audio feedback during the webinar, but feel free to use your microphone a little bit later when we do head into breakout sessions. If you're needing to change your speaker your sound is playing from, you can select the phone icon down at the bottom of your screen, and this will bring up a list of your speaker and microphone devices so you can choose your preferred audio output. We do encourage you to participate during today's webinar, and we will primarily rely on the public chat. In the left-hand gray menu panel, you can open the public chat and share notes. If you click on the public chat, you will see a chat option between all webinar attendees, the NLC facilitator, and your webinar instructor. Simply click on the box that says send a message to public chat, type the message you want to send and hit enter, or click the blue paper airplane icon to send your message. Please send your comments and any questions you have into the chat, and feel free to use the raise your hand feature at the bottom right of the screen if you think we missed something along the way. Any tech support issues can be submitted here as well, and I will do my best to help you navigate through it. If you click the shared notes section, you will find some helpful links for today, like today's webinar feedback survey, how to join our weekly newsletter, the location of the Cathedral webinar archive on our YouTube channel, also connect with us on LinkedIn, and a bookmark for easy login if you do decide to check out Cathedral Constant Learning in the future. All right, let's get the chat box going now by letting everyone know your names, where you're from, where you're joining us from, your tribal affiliation. If you have one, you may be a tribal employee or your role within Indian country that may have led you to today's webinar. And one quick final note while you're introducing yourselves in the chat is to try to avoid clicking on the red menu panel all the way on the left of your screen. If you click on this red menu panel, it will take you out of the live webinar. If you do this accidentally, click this. You can simply rejoin by once again clicking the green bar at the top of your screen. And with that, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce today's webinar instructor, Linnell Smith, and I will now hand it off to her. There you go.
Thank you, Jasmine. Welcome everyone. It's good to see. I can see folks as you're logging in, so I know a couple of folks, some familiar names. And of course, it's always wonderful to see some new folks coming into the space here. And so I'm here to talk with you about strengthening Native teams. Such a big dynamic that can happen in Indigenous-based teams, and lots going on, and how do we function at the highest possible efficiency, and then also working with folks that maybe we spend like more time with our teammates than we do with our families at times, right? So it's a huge dynamic, and we want to definitely make it a good place for us to be working in. So we're going to talk about that today. But first of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Lynelle Smith, and I am so honored to be in circle with you today. I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, facilitator, and a consultant. But first and foremost, I am an Indigenous Diné woman, and I really believe in the work that we do in Indigenous communities. So I really want to create a space that allows for us to do some work on ourselves through like just becoming aware of different things, but also really do some work in healing within our tribal communities in different areas. A little bit about my business name. I am the owner of Black Sheep Insight Consulting and Coaching. I am an LLC, and it took a lot of thought for me to come up with this name. It means a lot to me. Black Sheep is my first clan. We're a matriarchal society in our Diné tradition, and so it really ties me to the women in my lineage, and really where I draw strength and wisdom and grounding and purpose. So I wanted to honor that aspect of who I am, but also when you look at my logo, that has a lot of meaning for me as well. So of course the black sheep is right in the center of my logo, but also the design in the perimeter is a bracelet that my father had gifted me when I turned 18. It's not this one. I switched between this one and the one that my father had gifted me. And it was the design inside the bracelet. So I wanted to honor my father who passed 3 years ago and really bring that forward, as well as like my first clan. So it does have a lot of meaning to me and a lot of thoughtfulness, and I really want to honor that aspect of it. And in the Western world, black sheep can be like this kind of a negative connotation, but I really like to honor it because it is my first clan, but also it gives like another way of looking at things as a consultant. So I bring a different insight to kind of that thinking out of the box, right? And so I am also a certified coach. So I do a lot of leadership coaching, incorporate that into all the work that I do. But one of the things that I'm super passionate about, and I actually do have a couple of webinars coming up through that will be shared on NLC, on the NLC platform, is really rooted in financial trauma awareness. And so if you're curious about that, definitely look into registering for those sessions. That's a big part of the work that I'm doing. I really try to incorporate in all of the trainings and workshops that I share, because we all have ways of behaving and having this relationship with money. So I want to incorporate that as part of awareness, and how do we heal from it, right? So that's a big part of why I wanted to launch my own consulting work, because then I get to focus on the passion projects, right? But my career has spanned about 29 years, and I've been really rooted in nonprofit, tribal, native CDFI work. I used to run an organization back on my reservation that focused on bringing mortgage opportunities to my Navajo tribal members through traditional mortgage financing. So that was very fulfilling. Got to do some consultant work after that under a different business that I established. And then I worked for Awista Corporation for close to 10 years and really got to do what I enjoyed, just on a larger scale within lots of tribal communities. And so now with my new business, like I said, I get to focus on some passion projects, but also do a lot of great work and exciting work in tribal communities currently. So that's a little bit about me professionally. Personally, I have 3 grown daughters, empty nester here, 2 grandchildren, take care of my mom about half of the time that I'm not working. So just kind of fulfilled in a lot of ways, and really honored and enjoying sharing space with you today. I wanted to just have this as an open dialogue. So I don't have a separate Q&A time, but if you want to chime in, definitely jump into the chat. We do have the ability to unmute, so we'll have opportunities there. I want to create as much of an interactive space as possible. Although I can't see your beautiful faces, I would love to hear your voices when we get that opportunity, and then definitely just ask questions as we're going along. I'll try and monitor the chat myself as I'm presenting, but Jasmine will also be able to do that for me as well. And then just to share where I'm calling or zooming in from, or remotely zooming in. I'm in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, which is just right outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I'm like 3 hours from my hometown. So it's a nice, convenient spot, central location. Okay, so let's jump into some content here. But first off, I just want to do an informal poll within the folks that are on the webinar. So when you think about your team dynamic, the organization that you're currently working in, what best describes your current team? And you can use any adjective, any descriptor that how you would describe your current team. And so I'd love to see that in the chat. We're going to use the chat quite a bit, so hopefully you're able to jump in and type that in there. So if we can do the first question, what best describes your current team? And we have one that is listed as dysfunctional, which can be a common situation in a lot of teams. Siloed, they work on their things only, another common way to describe a team. Egotistical, maybe tied to individuals' personalities, passionate about a community and culture, don't listen, do their own thing. Track, relay team. I love that. That's a cute metaphor. Combative. So we do have some negative aspects of how we view and how we feel our team is functioning, and others may have a more positive experience maybe within that team dynamic. And just know that all of these things can occur at different stages of team development, and when we come into a team, we may be an established team member, may be in this position or within this organization for a number of years, or we may be coming in new into this organization. So there can be different dynamics that happen, and we're going to talk about those different things. And the second part of this question is to share one word that describes how you feel when you're part of a strong team. And so hopefully you've had that experience to where you've been a part of a team that you felt really good. You felt like things were clicking, things were happening, and you could kind of lean into that strong team. How did that feel? And if you haven't had that experience, just go ahead and put NA. So not applicable. I haven't had that experience yet. So how did you feel when you're part of a strong team? So secure, we all take credit for wins. You feel confident, feel like a survivor, you feel productive, right? And so a lot of positive kind of words are coming forward when we feel we're part of a strong team. We feel empowered, we feel appreciated, right? And when we feel these things, when we're part of a strong team, it creates these efficiencies, it creates more productivity, it creates trust, right? And this is how we can navigate at our highest. This is when we feel really optimal and we're able to function, right? So there's a lot of different things that can feed into that, and we're going to talk and pick apart a few of these things. So I'm just curious, this isn't on the slide here, but if you can drop in the chat, how long have you been working with your current team? So maybe it's 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Maybe we have some folks that have been there, like Michelle, 18 years, right? So list there. And my team, I'm a consultant, so I'm a team of one, and I've been doing this for a little over a year with my current consulting business. But with my previous organization, I was with them for almost 10 years. So you get to learn a lot about the different styles that people have. So there's a good mix here. So we have some folks that are coming in as new as 3 months, and then we have some folks that have been in their organizations for a number of years, right? 18 years, 27 years, Joseph. So lots of experience in the room. So we definitely want to lean into you all that have been working in teams to share your insights, your experience, any challenges, and of course, like things that have worked well, right? And we can also learn from the newer folks because they may just be new coming into this existing team, but they could have been with a previous team for a number of years. All right, thank you for participating in that. And so now that we've kind of grounded ourselves, got to know a little bit about who's in the room, how long we've been doing the work that we've been doing with the existing team, we're going to talk and reflect about what happens after a team comes together. So whether your team is brand new or has worked for a number of years, every team's going to work through these different stages of growth. And so for us as participants in this webinar, we want to understand these stages so that we can learn how to respond to others within our team with intention, with empathy, maybe even with a little bit of compassion instead of frustration, right? And frustration can lead to a lot of other behaviors showing up within our team dynamics. So you may have seen or heard of this model before, the forming, storming, norming, and performing. So I want to have us put on our indigenous lens, our native lens to look at this. So it's not necessarily a hierarchy, but we're going to think about it as a circle of growth. So much as like the medicine wheel on the slide here, each direction is going to represent a different kind of energy that your team is going to be moving through in this team development stages. So when we look at the first one, forming, and you'll see on the slide, it's the getting to know each other stage. So this is where relationships are new to one another. Trust is very fragile. It's just starting. It's trying to be established. And everyone is trying to understand the purpose and expectations within this team and then within the organization. And we're going to talk a little deeper into each of them and give you an overview right now. And then in the storming phase, this is where we're navigating those tensions and roles. And so this is where those tensions can emerge. It's not a bad thing, but it's where people start becoming a little more honest and able to articulate that, and engagement within team members start to happen. And then you can go into the norming phase. This is where we're building shared practices. So your team starts finding a rhythm and how to work with one another and establishing those shared practices. This is where maybe that collaboration starts happening. You're working together and communicating and enjoying working with one another. The last stage is the performing stage, and this is where we're collaborating effectively. So this is when things within the team dynamic is really flowing well. It's naturally happening. Everyone on the team is bringing their own individual gifts to the table. Their decisions are in alignment with the values of the team and the organization, and collaboration really starts to feel like a natural part of this team dynamic. So when we're looking at this, remember I said this is kind of circular, like the medicine wheel, so it's not necessarily a linear process. So we don't want to think of, well, as a new individual coming into this team, I'm going to form, then I'm going to storm, I'm going to norm, and then perform. So we don't want to think of it as a linear process, but think of it as that circular process. So sometimes a team that's already in norming may go back into storming or forming. So, and it's okay. And it's just part of the rhythm of that team dynamic. So we want to be able to understand that. So you'll see the little prompt at the bottom. So in the chat, I would love to hear from you based on that short descriptor of each of the stages. Which stage is your team currently in based on your perspective and understanding of the 4 stages? So if you can type that in the chat, that'd be great. And James, I just saw your question. Do you see the team development being a formal or informal process or a combination of many aspects? And I think as we're going through each stage, I'm going to give you some ways that you can incorporate strategies in each of the stages. And being that we can be very diverse teams, and I know we're in, like some of us may be in person, some of us may be remote workers within a team, maybe we have a hybrid situation. So how do we incorporate and really support team development within each of these stages? So it can be a formal process and it can be an informal process. So there can be like ways to incorporate on the daily, but also even bringing someone in to do some formal team development work can also be very beneficial. So I think it is like the second part of your question. It can be a combination with different moving parts and aspects of it. So hopefully that's helpful. And if it still doesn't quite feel clear as we're going through each of the stages, definitely you can ask a follow-up question. Okay, so we have a good mix here. We have storming, norming, storming usually, norming, between storming and norming, forming. Yeah, so I haven't seen any performing, right? So we're either kind of in that early getting to know you stage. Some of us are in the storming, where we're navigating tensions and roles within the team dynamic. And then the norming, where we're building those shared practices. And just know that these are all normal things that you see within a team dynamic, and all stages are very valuable to the development of this team. So we don't want to necessarily have the goal in mind for us individually, like, oh, I got to move to this next stage, this next stage. It tends to happen organically as long as we're building the entire team, right? Because if we have one person that wants to be at the performing stage, and so they're bringing shared practices, maybe they're aligning their values with the organization's core values, and then you have another individual that is new to the team and has no idea what the mission or vision of the organization is and what are the core values of the organization, it can be harder for them to move through the process, right? So we're going to talk about different strategies that we can incorporate, but I want to talk about each of the stages a little deeper, and we're going to start with the forming. So this is where, like I said, where relationships are being built. We're clarifying things. We're looking at learning about these team members. So it's more about, like, it's just not about introductions. It's really creating that safety, that space for belonging, to let folks that are newer to the team come in and really learn the roles and responsibilities. So we're going to see what that looks like. So as we're looking at stage 1 at the forming, building connection and clarity, this is going to be an important piece where the team story is really going to start to come together here. It's that stage where we're establishing introductions about one another, we're discovering new things about one another, and we're building trust. So when we come together, thinking about that circle, the circular nature of this. So when we're coming into the circle, we want to start learning about individuals' roles, responsibilities, personalities are so key in team development, and then learning about their communication styles. So if we did like a quick poll in the room here, we have about 37 folks in the webinar. There's 37 different types of personalities there's 37 ways of communicating that we feel is beneficial for us, how we take in information, how we share information out. So when we think about a team like that with all these different personalities, perspectives, and styles, how do we navigate that, right? And so part of this is really understanding and learning about the team members. And when we're working in an organization and we have an onboarding orientation process, think about what that process is for you in your organization. What does that look like? Are we very intentional about the time we're taking to bring on new team members, for us established team members to learn about new folks coming in, and then also for the new folks to learn about the folks that have been there for a long time? So we want to be intentional about that, right? Because when you have new folks coming into an established space, they may not trust everyone there yet, right? They don't know the folks. They're trying to establish trust. And is it okay for me to speak? Is it okay for me to share my ideas? Will those ideas be respected? So a lot can happen in this stage. So that trust is brand new. The trust can be fragile. And many of the people in this stage may not yet feel comfortable sharing opinions or disagreeing with one another. So this is why you want to put that attention and focus on building the relationships first, right? And so during the forming stage, your job as a team member or a leader is to really give an opportunity to create space for introductions that go beyond titles, right? So maybe this is where we have storytelling. We have shared prompts that each of us can respond to. This is where we clarify the shared purpose within the organization and have team agreements early on so that everyone is aware of those team agreements moving forward. And then as a leader or a team member, we always want to model what we want to see in the new folks coming into this space. So maybe we want to model curiosity about one another, right? Maybe we want to model respect. And so these small intentional acts really build that safety within the forming stage. And what you mentioned, James, like within this gathering, meeting, training, to have a talking circle. And that's one that I actually do have in here as well, to encourage input from all, right? Rather than having someone that dominates the discussion. Because one of the things where team members feel value and feel acknowledged and feel heard is when they can share ideas, thoughts uninterrupted, right? So think about just practicing those listening skills, or maybe being in a meeting where we were wanting to share an idea or a response to a question. And maybe we had the experience of someone talking over us. It doesn't feel good. It feels maybe I feel disrespected. Maybe it feels rude that they didn't let me finish my thought or my words. So a talking circle gives uninterrupted time. And so that can be a really good way to share in the forming stage on with intentional question prompts. So I love that suggestion, James. It's definitely a good way to open up space. So when we think about this, when I was like kind of walking through content too, I wanted to make sure there were some offerings that can be helpful for us. Maybe we're new to the team, and how do I go back and share this with my supervisor? Or how do I go back and share this information within the team that I'm currently working in? It could be a department. It could be a team of 4 people within an organization of 50, right? So how do I do this? And then also being aware that we may be in person 5 days a week. We may be a hybrid. Maybe we're in person 3 days, virtual the other 2, or maybe we're a total remote staff person. So these are different ways that we can incorporate that depending on our physical situation within the team. So it's always great to open up space with individuals in grounding. And I'm big on this, especially for trainings, for any type of meetings where we're coming together and we have an agenda and task items that we want to go through. And the reason we want to have like a grounding, and some people like to open with prayer, moment of silence, some sort of acknowledgement, it's really helpful because when you think about us as humans and all these different roles that we take on and responsibilities that we carry outside of the workspace, those are things that are still going on in our mind, right? And so we're not robots. We can't just like, oh, delete, 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 or I'm going to put it in this folder while I'm doing my 8 to 5. A lot of things can still come up for us, like, oh shoot, did I pay for my kid's lunch for the week? Is he going to be hungry today? Did I pack his lunch? I forgot to schedule that doctor's appointment. I need to go grocery shopping after work. There may be all of these different thought bubbles of roles and responsibilities. So when we're coming into a meeting space or a training opportunity, it's great to ground and get people on the same level, right? Just to give them an opportunity to settle into what we're going to be talking about, right? And then an easy way too is just have more rich, fuller introductions. So when you're coming into a new team gathering, maybe it's giving them an opportunity to share beyond the titles or the department or roles and responsibilities. Maybe it's asking them, where are they joining from? What's a value that they're carrying forward today? Who first taught them about teamwork, right? And so we're really leaning into that storytelling and giving them an opportunity to share more, but also for us to really learn about these folks at the table. You can use chat like we're doing now. We can do the talking circle. You can do this in a virtual space or an in-person space. You can do small groups for sharing introductions or storytelling. When I do trainings, especially in the virtual space, maybe it's a 3-day training, I create little opportunities where they go into smaller pods or breakout rooms and talk to one another. So I'll give them a question prompt that maybe ties into content, or maybe it's just learning about one another. And so they have a smaller group to kind of share that information and storytelling with, and then we come back to the main group. And so the more I do this throughout a training, the more opportunity they have to learn about others in that space. So think about that for the in-person kind of approach as well, really giving them a time to share stories, right? And then they can maybe introduce that new insight, that new learning about their teammate back to the full group. You can co-create team agreements. These are really important. I do this in trainings. I do it in coach sessions, to where you have, what do we all agree upon to create this meeting space that's going to be conducive to us, right? To meet. So maybe it's like we share stories, we use humor, maybe we have scheduled breaks, maybe we honor time. Silence may be okay, right? And so you can always develop these team agreements and then revise them if necessary, right? Share visuals of roles and connections. So you can put up like a team map. You can do this in Miro, Google Slides, even like Zoom has a whiteboard function that shows the names of the team, their roles, maybe who they serve. If you're a remote team, like maybe I serve one tribal nation and then so-and-so serves another tribal nation within the state. So it allows for folks to kind of learn and consistently learn about one another. As leaders within these teams, you have to be intentional about building that into the agenda. So it can be on the front end to build that relationship time before you start jumping into tasks, right? And then we also want to celebrate what we hear. So this may be those, I caught someone doing something good, or I just want to highlight, acknowledge that Linnell did a webinar and had so many attendees in that webinar. And so we're sharing about one another, right? And I'd like to honor that my teammate, Sally, helped me with this presentation, right? And so it's giving them acknowledgement, really sharing back what they've done for us and the team, right? And then we always want to end these meetings or connections with a reflection and with gratitude. It can be a good practice to have that closure through connection as well. And so having that built into the agenda and moving forward is a really easy way to help teams that are in the forming stage, really building that connection and clarity. So that's what happens there. So what I want you to do is just type in the chat here, what can you do, or what can you and your team do to create safety and belonging in your team that may be in the forming stage? So type that in the chat. What can we do to create safety and belonging in our team that's in the forming stage? Yeah. Respect. Prayers first. Respect. And sometimes even thinking about the terminology that we use to make sure that it's shared terminology. So if we say respect is a core value, I want respect shown in the meeting, sometimes it's elaborating a little more too on it. Like, what does respect mean to Linnell? What does respect mean to Megan and Caitlin? And so that can be helpful in that communication piece, right? Trusted environment for sharing, be more open, trust, have time to share their own personal stories. Yep. Learning about one another, team building, have time for grounding, positive acknowledgement. Definitely. Those are all ways that we can create safety, trust, and belonging in our team. Active listening for sure. Definitely. And so in this stage, as people are getting more comfortable here, they start speaking their truth, right? This is where we become a little more vocal, and that's where maybe differences can emerge. And that's going to lead us into the next stage, which is storming. And this is about navigating those tensions with grace. So we want to look at how we move through that stage in a healthy way. So we're going to look at stage 2, which is storming, navigating differences with humility. So this is where we start seeing team members maybe share honest opinions. They start sharing some new ideas. And sometimes this is where disagreements can start percolating, right? So this may happen in the storming stage. And so even though storming may sound a little negative, it's really not. This is really where teams are growing, right? If this is the growth edge. And even when you look at the image, the storming part is where the lightning, the thunder, that charge of electricity is happening. And then right on the side of it is the rainbow, right? So we're growing into the new phase, right? And so when we're in the storming phase, this is where we want to think about those maybe disagreements where things can feel like there's a little more tension happening. This is where your team cares enough to engage, right? So you might notice that people may challenge like roles and responsibilities. They may start looking at processes and challenging those. Misunderstandings can emerge in this phase. A lot of times misunderstandings can be rooted in the different communication and work styles, which is another important tool or way that we can navigate and support the storming phase. And we'll talk a little bit about that. During this phase, some team members may pull back while others are like pushing forward a lot harder, right? And that's okay. And so the whole key here for team members and leaders is not to avoid that tension or that disagreement kind of space, but to normalize it. So healthy teams know that tension isn't a threat, right? It's an opportunity to learn how to work through the differences with humility. So when we're working through the storming stage, we really want to normalize the conflict, right? And then hopefully move into strengthening the communication. We have to rebuild trust after that happens. And then we want to reconnect back to that shared purpose. So when we're doing this in-person teams, hybrid or remote kind of teams, when we're in person, this is where it's really helpful for having that talking circle discussion. So kind of opening it up, that conflict doesn't mean that anything's broken in the team. It just means that we care enough to kind of bring these issues up, right? And in the virtual space, you can use this through a question prompt, right? So like even how we opened up today, you can do that in the virtual space. What's a word that describes how our team energy feels right now? And so in that forming stage, you're building trust. So hopefully they feel safe enough in that environment to be honest about what they want to share, right? They want to use a word that describes how our team energy feels right now. And so when I opened up where you feel what describes your team, we heard like some words like dysfunctional, silos, things like that. And we have a safe space here to be able to share that, right? And so think back to your team. We want to take some time in the forming stage so that we create that space to where people can be honest and share. And then Taryn, it seems like without the forming stage, the storming stage would not be set up for success. Yes, I totally believe in that as well. So when we're thinking about this circular process, we may think that, oh, hey, my team is in the storming phase, but we've been in storming for 3 years now. We don't seem to move into performing or any other phase. It may be because we've never established the forming stage. We never cultivated that connection and trust within the team. And so in order for us to keep moving forward, then we do need to maybe step back and think about what do we need to do to build, be intentional about building trust and relationship within our team. So it may be going back to that forming stage to definitely build that up, beef that up, before we can move into storming, right? So we can have those hard conversations. We can address conflict. We can bring up issues and challenges, right? So we can do this through talking circles. I think that's always helpful in any of these stages, or even having a process for the virtual space. Like, okay, we're going to take turns so that we're not speaking over one another. We're going to put your name in the chat, and then we'll go down the line, right? So that everyone has time to speak. If time is a concern, maybe we only have a 90-minute window for this meeting. We can be timekeepers. So many of us have our phones. We can have a stopwatch. You set that up at the very beginning. We're going to have a minute to share what's on our mind. And when you hear the bell, you have 10 seconds to close your thought, and then we'll move on to the next person. So having those agreements up front before we start talking circles or anything like that is really important too, so that we have the quote unquote rules for the conversation that we're sharing, right? You can even use emojis in the chat if you're in Zoom. I'm not sure if this platform has that functionality, but you can like give some love to your teammate for what they shared, give them a thumbs up. Give them the high five. There's a lot of emojis that are available in a lot of the platforms that can just be that little bit of encouragement as well. You always want to go back and revisit team values and agreements. This is always helpful in any stage of the process. So when we have those team values identified, like we talked about in the forming stage, we want to make sure that we're intentional about that. Right. Thanks, Jasmine. No emojis on this platform yet. So we can talk about values and even have a question prompt when we're looking at the team values, like what value feels the hardest to live by right now, right? And so maybe trust is a value, and it's like I type in trust. I'm not feeling the trust, or honesty, transparency, whatever your team has listed as core values, you can come back to it at this stage. You can do it in a poll. You can do it in the chat. You can do it in person, right? We always want to come back and clarify roles and responsibilities. And we can in person. I love doing in-person team development, because then we can get that kinesthetic kind of vibe going to where we put all our values up. We're able to navigate. We're able to find out where our growth edge is. What do I feel comfortable doing, right? And you can still do this in a virtual space, but I always feel like team development, it's always so much more rich and fulfilling when we're in person, and we can kind of see the body language, and we're able to kind of share the energy that we're cultivating and creating, right? So when we clarify roles and responsibilities, then we're able to see, like, are there any gaps, right? So who's doing this? How do we have coverage for this, right? And then we want to practice empathy, compassion, and perspective taking, right? So this can be an easy prompt as, maybe this is something I appreciate about you, Jasmine. And one thing I need from you, Linnell. And so you're building that mutual understanding about one another, right? And you can do this in pairs. If you're in person, you can go into breakout rooms and do that as well. And I'm a big one on humor and having that lightness within team development. So having sharing stories or having a gratitude round can really be helpful. Giving like, share one word of positive gratitude right now. And so they can put it in the chat, or you go around and do that one word kind of circle approach. You can reconnect back to that shared purpose within the team or the organization. Why does our work matter? What are we working towards? What's that vision, right? What are the things that I'm doing that work us towards that vision, right? You can do this on a Jamboard. You can do it on a magic wall where everyone adds a piece and they have this huge visual. I love working with puzzle pieces. They have big blank puzzle pieces that all interlock, so it's just a natural puzzle fit, but people can write maybe the values on there, or maybe they can write what's one thing that they're doing to work towards this shared vision, right? And so then they have a visual that they can take a picture. Hey, save it as your screensaver, put it on your phone, have it posted in the office, right? Have that kick off our meetings, things like that. And then we also like that holistic aspect of the work that we do is to have that restorative or healing time and space available to us, right? And so when we work in tribal communities, we may have trauma coming up with the clients that we're serving. We may be suffering from different types of trauma and how it's showing up in communication styles, how it kind of formed my personality and how I deal with things, right? If I'm working in the financial education space, my financial trauma may be coming forward in that. It may impact decision making. So there's lots of things that can be going on, but giving an opportunity for our team to come back to restoration and have time to heal can be super helpful in cultivating a team that's in the storming phase, right? And then, of course, always celebrating progress and celebrating team wins, right? And this can be done in person and virtually as well. So for team members and team leaders in this stage, your role is to really hold the space steady for folks, right? So we're balancing that honesty, but also with care, right? And so when Indigenous or Native teams thrive, it's when they honor both that truth and that relationship, right? And conflict can lead to connection for folks, right? It's just how you navigate that space. I've worked with teams that tend to be avoidant. Maybe you have an avoidant type leadership style. And so this can limit teams from moving into the next phase, right? If we don't address the conflict, if we don't address the differences and disagreements. So this is where that's going to be maybe our growth edge as a team member or as a leader within the team. How do I incorporate some of these things into my team dynamic to really cultivate movement into the next phase, if that's the intention, right? Let me just double check the chat here.
I have a question from James, actually.
Yeah, I just saw that. Any thoughts about having a facilitator to help the team stay on focus? Yes, definitely. You have folks that can do team development work, which is different than team building. So sometimes, like, people say, well, I want to bring my team together because we're having conflict, or I just want people to get to know each other, and we have poor communication and the morale's low. Those are probably the most common things I hear when people are saying, I want team building to happen within the team. So there's actually a difference. Team building or team bonding is when people come together in a shared activity. So it might be coming together for a dinner, it might be going bowling, it might be axe throwing, it might be going to Topgolf, whatever your function is. That's team bonding and team building, to where you're just kind of learning about one another. Team development is where you're very intentional about the outcomes of what you want to have with this team. So if I had someone ask me like, hey, we're disconnected. Our team feels very disconnected. We have people that are unhappy in their job roles. We have people bringing up things that they're conflicting with other team members. So they're bringing things up around maybe conflict and then communication. Those become the goals of what you're going to focus on in team development. And so for the work that I've done within teams, we start with this, right? We have a good understanding of the different phases, and it's okay if we're in different phases, but if the goal is to really ramp up and boost up communication, or how to deal with conflict, or how to learn about the different personalities and my work style, can be really helpful in the forming stage, right? And so sometimes having an outside person, a facilitator that can help navigate that and guide the team, can be very helpful and beneficial. Some of the things that I'm giving you that can be easily incorporated, that you can do as a team member or a leader within a team as well. But if you want to do some true team development work, you can bring in a facilitator to do that as well. And then for a couple of groups that I'm working with, we do this long term. So team development isn't a one and done. So you're constantly working towards. So I work with a team for maybe 2 or 3 days on intentional goals and objectives to the time together. And then we come back and revisit that. Maybe it's 6 months down the road. And then we see how the team dynamic, what's going on with the team, and then does it need any tweaking? So then we do that there. Maybe new things pop up. Maybe they have, like, they hired 10 new team members in a 3-month time span. So they're kind of feeling that forming stage, right? So maybe the team development is coming back and looking at that and building that forming, that trust and relationship, right? So there's different ways that you can incorporate like a facilitator to help navigate, but there's also some ways that you can do it as a leader or a team member within your organization. So hopefully that was helpful. Okay, so let's go into the next phase here, which is stage 3, the norming phase. So this is where we're finding rhythm and shared practices. So when you think about the image before, this is going to be after the storm comes the calm, right? And so once a team is able to move through the tension, you begin to see the alignment, right? The alignment of that team. And so this is where we start seeing stage 3, the norming. So as the team is finding their rhythm, this is where you see maybe communication is improving, right? We have that shared communication language of what does respect mean? What is honoring one another's opinion mean? What is truth? What is honesty and transparency? So we're looking at those values, and we're really pulling in them into the communication. People understand each other's work styles. One thing that I didn't really mention in stage 2 is, I guess I sort of did, but I didn't go too deep on it, is it's really important for us to understand personalities and the work styles of the individuals. So some of the work we do, like personality assessments, and we learn about one another because we're so different in how we take in information, how we share information. Maybe I'm more social, maybe I'm just like, boom, 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 let's just get to the agenda. So once we understand our team members, then we can start learning how to navigate, how to work with them, right? And I always share this same story with folks because I worked with a team, and they were about a team of 12 to 15 folks. And one of the individuals, who was a male, I think he was the only male in a dynamic of women. So he was the only male that was working there. And then we did the personality assessments, and we did some strengths-based assessments as well. And we were walking through some of the ways that we communicate. Each of those assessments kind of highlighted different strengths and challenge areas for the individual. And one of the things that he just was like so blown away by, was an aha for him, was that he said, oh my gosh, I'm XYZ type. And he was like, this is why I can have conversation with one of his team members. And he said, we just boom, 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 get through the call, all business. And then, all right, thank you, bye. And they hang up. And then he said, and then I work with XYZ team member, and she wants connection. She wants to, oh, how's your wife doing? How's your kids? What did you do this week? And so she wants that connection first, and then they can get to business. And so he realized this about 2 of his team members. And he said, I never knew why we couldn't just go boom, boom, boom through the agenda of what we needed to get work done. He said, she has to connect first, have a connection, and then we can go into business. So it made his job so much easier, learning the differences between these 2 employees and how he can navigate those conversations. And so this is how we learn about one another's work styles, and why it's so important to find out about who's in the room, right? And so in this norming, finding the rhythm and shared practice, this is building on that connection. So this can be helpful where we have those check-ins that happen, right? Maybe we have monthly reflections. Maybe we have team huddles. Maybe this is where we have the gratitude at the end. So we're having structure kind of lead our meetings. We know what to expect. We know what's been established, right? And this can happen virtually or in person as well. We really strengthen the communication flow. So maybe this is where we identified and articulated, what does it mean to have that open door communication? Can you come into my office and share something that you're feeling challenged with? Maybe this is where we have that open invitation to ask questions about the hierarchy, right? So we're really getting input from our team. And this can be an anonymous kind of feedback loop, or maybe this is just we have that open communication in those team meetings, right? This is where we can go back and refresh those team agreements, those co-created agreements that we've established. Is there anything that needs to change or update? Maybe this is where we update or reinforce those rituals of connection, right? So having those talking circles, those reflection circles, maybe we have a 5-minute open gratitude, or share something from your workspace, talk about your fur baby at home, right? So we're still learning, we're still honoring that relationship and connection piece. And then even reinforcing collective learning can really be helpful here as well. So this can be the teach the team moments, right? Where a staff member shares one success within their department, or one win that they've had, or a tip. If Linnell's teaching financial education, maybe I talk about a tool I've used in a training that the whole team can be aware of. and share and maybe incorporate, right? You can do this in reflection journals. Maybe there's a shared document. Hey, I did this. I call them indigenizers, but like energizers that you can add in the virtual space or energizers for an in-person. Maybe you have a shared document and create this master that people can pick and choose from, right? And then having those feedback loops. What can we improve? What's been working well, right? Or we have those pairs of going into breakout rooms. Like, I appreciate when you XYZ, or I'd like to request that XYZ happens, right? And then you have an opportunity to clarify and align around systems that you have in place. So really looking at process and procedure, and is it really creating efficiencies for us? When I work with some teams, sometimes they have to walk through the whole client intake process, right? And they find where maybe there's bottlenecks or things that slow things down. And this gives an opportunity for folks to be like, you know what? That 10-page application is probably scaring folks away. So I think if we do a 2-page application, we'll get more folks in, and then we can collect the rest of the information at meeting 2 or 3, right? And so this gives them an opportunity to troubleshoot, improve systems, process, and procedures. And then we always want to go back to those shared values, right? So we want to reaffirm those community team agreements that we've established, and find out if this is still working for us. Are we still honoring this? And then celebrating those milestones, celebrating the collective growth and the collective wins, and then also offering up opportunities to maintain like the balance between work and life outside of work, right? And what does that mean for us? Maybe that's my mental wellness, my spiritual wellness. Am I giving folks time to restore and recuperate and ground, right? And how does that show up in our team dynamic, right? And James, on the shared practices that keep their team strong, maybe periodically, quarterly, mid-year, annually, assessments to view accomplishments, challenges, revisions to the original plan. I love that idea, definitely. And this can be built into work plans as well. And if your organization has done strategic planning, you have overarching strategic goals, and those are generally scaled down to the individual team member, right? How am I feeding into that strategic goal? And so this can be really helpful to come back. I believe strategic planning documents should be like living and breathing every single day. It's guiding the organization. So Linnell has a work plan that's built out to support achieving this strategic goal. And what does that look like? And so this gives you an opportunity to share those accomplishments. Hey, strategic goal was done in year 2, even though we had it as a 3-year goal. Or having those assessments to look at, what did we achieve? What have we reached as far as those milestones? And then what have we been challenged with, right? What's slowing us down? Why have we not made progress on this particular goal or objective, right? And so that can be like a tool that just becomes something that we use on the day-to-day, right? So that's awesome. Thank you, James. And so during this norming phase, your role shifts from like being the referee in disagreements and kind of those challenge spaces to really keeping the rhythm of things that are working well, right? And really keeping the energy of connection, relationship, and trust, right? And that work that we're doing towards that shared purpose, right? And so when we think about this stage, what shared practices keep your team strong? So think about the norming stage. If I know some of us mentioned that we were in the norming stage. So what shared practices keep your team strong in the norming stage? So add that to the chat. I'm curious to see what you all do or incorporate into your workplace. Shared practices to keep your team strong. Oh yeah, it's right on the last, it's the last bullet on the slide, the reflection. So what shared practices keep your team strong? Morning huddle to tackle the day. Yeah, so it's just that quick connection. What do we have on the agenda? Maybe it's like, what's priority today? What needs to get done today, right? Are you behind closed doors so you have uninterrupted time to finish that board report? Regular staff check-ins, a suggestion box for improved services for our members, right? Transparent communication. When I think we are, something crazy happens and back to 0 or 1. So Stephanie, the way I'm taking that is that sometimes when you feel like you're in maybe the norming space and something urgent comes up or something that kind of hits from left field and it takes you and the team back, right? Okay. Yeah. So how do we keep that? And generally, when you're in the norming stage, you have pretty strong systems in place. People know the process, the communication is happening. So maybe in that stage, that won't necessarily happen so much, but it's not saying that it won't ever. But maybe you're more in the forming stage or the stage right after it, right? And so this is where we're still trying to establish those practices, those process and procedures, so that when we do get hit with something in left field, that it doesn't totally blow things up, right? It doesn't disrupt everything. So we're able to have a process or a procedure to manage it, right? And maybe this is where the communication happens. So for Stephanie, we may have to go back to the forming to kind of build that trust and build the relationship so that we can go into the next stage to where we start really building more honest communication and establishing routines and process and procedures, right? And then we all have a common plan to improve our community members' lives. So we all show up for meetings, right? And one thing that I think is really helpful in working in teams is that everyone needs to come back to that common plan, right? Or that common vision. Why are we here? What are we doing? What is the ultimate goal for the people that we are serving? So if I'm working in a housing organization, we want to make sure that we have safe, secure, affordable housing for all tribal members. Maybe that's our vision. Or maybe in my department, my vision might be that everyone has access to affordable capital so they can buy a home. Or maybe it's, I want everyone to have knowledge and awareness of their finances in order to make strong, informed decisions and eventually buy a house, right? So having that common vision, that common plan, that shared vision is going to be really important in building this phase, right? And building how we want to end up in the norming phase and then possibly into the performing phase. So when teams are committed to these shared practices that are happening in stage 3 and they have that mutual respect, that collaboration starts to happen. That can be really powerful. So this is when people start anticipating their other team members' needs. Maybe their decisions start really aligning with the values of themselves or with the team, and the work just begins to start to really flow. And so that's really the essence of stage 4, which is performing. And then this is where collaboration happens. This is collaboration in action. And so we're going to talk about this last stage. So once the team finds its rhythm, has all these shared practices, process, procedures in place, everyone starts moving together with trust and flow. So this collaboration starts to feel really natural, right? The team begins to function more as one. People anticipate each other's needs. They start to share leadership. So maybe it's like more of a flat kind of leadership. They make decisions that align with the shared purpose and values. So really looking at the overall vision, the values within the organization or within the team, all of that is what's leading this stage. So the energy is going to shift from coordination in the previous stage to collaborative, more of a collaborative space. So it's less about assigning tasks to folks, and it's more about co-creating the solutions to any of the issues or challenges maybe that are coming up, right? So the team members that are in the performing stage, they understand their roles, they understand others' roles and responsibilities, and they understand their strengths, right? So they can start to anticipate a lot, and things just start kind of clicking and working together, right? So when we're thinking about this stage, your role, if you're a leader within a team during this stage, you're really shifting from sustaining trust and celebrating growth, right? So we want to definitely still incorporate a lot of what we were doing in the previous stage, but it tends to be less cultivating that and kind of just nurturing it, right? And so when we're in the performing phase, and we said that this is where that deep collaboration can happen, we're still celebrating collective successes. We're sustaining that rhythm, and we're mentoring the next circle of leaders coming up, right? I just want to look at the chat here. And James, like being retired tribal management consultant, I wanted to, thank you. Yes. Thank you so much, James. I appreciate your feedback and your insight. It's really been helpful in kind of feeding into the content. Thank you so much. So some things that we can incorporate to really foster this stage is celebrate the collective flow and successes. So whether this is an in-person or virtual, this is where we're going to have that, maybe the gratitude, having that cultural grounding. Maybe this is where we have that celebratory lunch for meeting a milestone, meeting an objective. Maybe all of our team showed up at the board meeting, or maybe we want to honor our community, right? Maybe we honor the elders or community members. Maybe we want to have a board celebration. There can be a lot of different things that kind of celebrate the flow and the success of the organization. We can also take this time to really strengthen the peer-to-peer leadership. So this is maybe where we build on those teachable topics, right? We're sharing, maybe the team member sharing something they learned, maybe incorporating what you learned today and sharing it back to your team members, right? Maybe this is an opportunity for folks to be accountable for taking some of those pieces and sharing it back to the team. This can happen in peer learning circles. Maybe we do check-ins with one another on a weekly basis or every 2 weeks, whatever timing makes sense for you. We really want to embed reflection and those feedback learning loops to where we can talk about things that we've witnessed within the organization. Maybe it's pain points. Maybe it's like, hey, this intake process, I feel like it's not working so much, but you're able to have conversation about it and bring the team together to work around resolving it, right? Making it better. Maybe this is an opportunity to really determine whether, like, to share back what we're learning about how well we work together, right? And having those reflections shared back. We really want to maintain that ritual and rhythm that we've embodied. So having those familiar rituals still be a part of this stage. So having those open circles, the talking circles, this is where we're still learning about one another. We're constantly curious about learning about our team members, right? So we still have check-ins. We still have an opportunity to ground. We still have opportunity to restore and heal mentally, spiritually. We're giving that opportunity to do that. And of course, as always, we go back and revisit the mission and any alignment that needs to happen, whether it's culturally, values-based. We want to make sure that we're in alignment. Are our daily actions still aligned with the purpose of this department, with the purpose of this organization, right? And so we want to be able to have those check-ins. And then you can have question prompts that easily start this conversation. So what part of our mission are we living out most strongly right now? Where might we have some opportunities for realignment? So this gives the team an opportunity to share, right? To share back their insight here. And in this stage, we really want to encourage innovation and creativity. So remember, this is where we can anticipate one another. We know our strengths, right? We're in the mode of where we can be solutions-based. So we want to create and still cultivate that innovation and creativity. So maybe we have those brainstorming sessions. We have the brain dumps. We have the opportunity to experiment. And it's okay if we fail. We can readjust. We can try new ideas, evaluate and adjust, right? Maybe this is where we have an opportunity to take risks and learn from it, right? Because we're such a strong collaborative team, we have that flexibility to kind of give that in this space. And then, of course, the sustaining the wellness and balance of our team. So giving an opportunity for people to restore, giving them an opportunity to really lean into wellness, whatever that means for the team. We'll know what that is. So maybe Linnell likes 15 minutes of outside time, right? Or maybe this is where I just need to do a meditation and I close my door, turn off my office lights, and I do a quick guided meditation. Or maybe it's just, hey, I want to doom scroll on my social media for 5 to 10 minutes, right? So knowing what grounds folks and what helps them restore is part of this, and incorporating it into the ritual and the process and the procedure of the team. And then one of the last things too is that we want to evaluate and evolve together. So we want to have opportunities for like team retreats. Maybe this is where some team development happens. Maybe this is where we do some team bonding and we do some celebratory stuff. Or maybe this is where we do strategic planning and we look ahead 3, 5, 10 years, visioning and planning. And so this is where we can embody like, what are we most proud of? What's next for our team growth, right? And so this always gives you the opportunity, even when you're in stage 4, to constantly be moving your team forward, right? Constantly cultivating that performing stage. And so this is really where we're protecting that rhythm and what we have in place and nurturing the renewal of keeping this energy high here, right? So the team is moving from that space of me, right, coming into the team, or me as a leader in the team in that forming stage, to really working side by side in your team and working in that flow. So when we think about this final stage, like, how does it feel when your team is in flow and purpose? So I know when we asked about the team, where you thought your team was, I didn't see anyone that said they were in the performing stage. But what do you think it would feel like if your team was in stage 4 of performing, right? What would it feel like for you? So if you can put that in the chat, maybe it's just a one-word thing, maybe it's a phrase, but what would it feel like if your native team was in this performing stage 4? I love that question, James. So if you've had an established team for a while and then a new person joins the team, how do you bring in that new team member to make sure that they're a valuable member of the team? I would go back to some of the practices of the forming stage because this new team member is going to have to learn about the team, right? And the new team is going to have to learn about the new team member. And so we want to establish that trust, that relationship. So being very intentional on that, understanding the roles and responsibilities of everyone within that team is going to be really helpful. And so I would start with a lot of those aspects within the forming stage. And then you can start moving through with the new team member into the other stages, depending on where the full team was already in, right? And so you really need to build that connection. You need to build that trust. You need to build that relationship when a new person comes into this dynamic, right? And so that's going to be super important. And so if you were in the performing stage, connected, you'd feel connected. The members would understand their purpose and goals. Maybe it feels harmonious, feels automatic, right? Those are really good things. Effortless and meaningful. I almost said meaningless. Meaningful. Definitely. So things have that natural flow, right? Things are happening. We're not in conflict necessarily. We're not trying to figure out systems. We're not troubleshooting stuff. We can anticipate one another's movements in the space. We know who has what strengths. So it's like, hey, I'm going to pull Linnell in for this piece. I'm going to pull Sally in for this. And we're going to work through this project because Linnell's strength is XYZ, Sally's is ABC. This is going to make a really good team, right? So these are important pieces to that, to the different stages. So really having a good understanding of that is going to be key. And so I think we have like a little close to 10 minutes left. So I wanted to spend enough time on the stages because there's a lot there that we can incorporate. But I also want to talk about from team stages to team strength. So we went from forming to performing. And so while each of those stages has different, has its own rhythm and lessons, there's one thread that kind of runs through all of it. And it's really building that trust, right? And so we want to build trust within an organization. And this can look differently within each organization, but a lot of times it leans into like relationship. So knowing one another, our stories, our values, our families, knowing the rhythm, right? We show up consistently. People learn that they can depend on us. The other one is responsibility. We follow through. Our words and our actions match up, right? And then respect. We speak and listen to folks, even when we disagree. So these 4 different elements are really not just a concept, but it's going to be something that we live and breathe, right? And it shows up in teams. So we want to make sure that we're fostering, building trust within the team. And and this can be a hard thing. If there's been issues around trust that the team is just not feeling it right now for whatever reason, you have to rebuild. And if you're coming in new to this space, you have to establish the trust, right? Not knowing the backstory, but establishing trust within each of the team members. So really thinking about how do I incorporate this? So we're going to lead with relationship, right? So we're going to honor knowing about the person. We're going to give opportunity to learn about the team. We're going to understand what that team member values. A quick values map or a values activity can be really helpful to foster this at the beginning. I learned a lot about my team when I worked with EWONAP, and they were my team for almost 10 years, and they learned a lot about Linnell. And so through values work, one of the values that I embody is trust. Honesty, truth, and transparency are one of my 3 top values. And so when you have values established and people understand it, they understand what happens when a value is kind of walked over, right? It brings up anger, frustration. You're rubbing against something that's really important to Linnell when you lie to her. And she knows you're lying to her, right? And it creates tension, creates friction. So when people understand what you value and what your boundaries are, that creates a deeper understanding with folks, right? So a values activity is really helpful in this space. Listening to understand and not respond. So really practicing active listening, deep listening, without thinking about what I'm going to say next, right? And so when people truly feel heard, that is helpful in building trust, right? And so those are just a couple of things that I think are really helpful in this space. And then also how we model this, right? How does Linnell model honesty and transparency and truth when those are deep values? So if I'm over there lying about all kinds of XYZ, people are not seeing that I'm leaning into the values. Obviously, then it becomes like, oh, she doesn't value that, right? So we have to show up with integrity and model what we value, right? So those are some things that we can do to like help bring the team from these different stages to really lean into those strengths. One of the couple last slides here. So really thinking about trust as the foundation of strong teams, we want to look at trust as it grows and how we honor and understand how each person shows up in this circle in the work style. And so I talked about like understanding team dynamics and the work styles, because we're all different people and we have different ways of communicating. We have different ways of how our personality shows up. Maybe I'm an introvert, an extrovert. There's all kinds of things that feed into this. And so the more we can understand about our team, the more helpful it is in navigating and building that trust and honoring those pieces of us, right? And so this medicine wheel I adapted to kind of look at the different ways that we have work styles. So if we're more north facing, we're action oriented, direct, we're decisive, we're goal driven. These are our doers. They push project forward and make sure things get done. Our east facing folks are our vision folks. And they may be more creative, more big picture thinkers, the visionaries. There are idea generators and innovators. They're always looking at what's next. And then our south-facing relationship folks are more empathetic and supportive. They focus on maintaining the harmony within the team. They cultivate with care and really look at people's emotional and spiritual well-being. And then the West folks are more structured. They bring structure. So they tend to be a little more analytical, detail-oriented, and grounded. They make sure systems, data impacts, tracking, all of those pieces are in place. And so each of these directions really bring a different strength to the team. And each of them can have challenges when we're feeling out of balance in the team. So maybe when we're looking at our north-facing folks, they can feel too pushy, while our southern folks can avoid those hard conversations. So we're really trying to cultivate the balance within all of these different work styles. And that balance is only going to happen when we recognize and become aware and honor the gifts and work styles within all of the directions. And so this can be helpful with a facilitator to navigate this, to really have the intentional understanding of the different work styles and how do we work together? How do we use these strengths, right? How do we have communication and conversation in that space? So a couple of things that I wanted to highlight, and you'll have access to the PowerPoint as well. I'm trying to honor our time here and still get through a couple of these slides, but the Indigenous practices for building trust and communication, really thinking about those stories circles or talking circles, utilizing a tool, a talking stick, having an opening of gratitude and a closing of gratitude in those circles, but also thinking about values mapping, how we can incorporate that into the teamwork, and honoring silence as respect. So really being thoughtful before we respond, right? And it's okay to absorb information. And then having that ceremonial acknowledgement, celebrate contributions from the team members through gratitude. And so all of these practices can be incorporated on a day-to-day. And this is really going to be helpful in building that trust through these relationships, intentional ways of building relationship, establishing that rhythm, and establishing that respect, right? And so I think this might be, and one of my last slides, sorry, conflict as connection. And so knowing that when we have conflict, it doesn't mean that our team is broken. We just care enough to disagree, and reframing that conflict as understanding and incorporating some of the tools and ways that we can build trust and repair is going to be really helpful in this conflict space. But we talked deeply in each of the stages on that, right? And so I know we are at time. There's a slide here on aligning our work with mission and cultural values. But I also want to give you an opportunity just to kind of close our time together to share in the chat, like what gift do you bring your team? And that can be a word or a phrase. But also remember that strong teams are built over time and not in a day. So we're going to constantly cultivate that trust, incorporate humor and care and empathy for one another as we're building our team and navigating in these different stages. But I also want to thank each of you for your time, your attention, your participation in today's webinar. And you'll see my email address down at the bottom. If you want to reach out with any questions, curiosities, definitely reach out to me. And I have a few more webinars this month on the Native Learning Center platform. So just keep an eye out, and I look forward to sharing space with you in person and seeing you individually as well down the road. So thank you all.
And thank you so much, Danielle. We really appreciate you taking the time to kind of go through that and show us all the glorious stages that we can have with team building and development. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close out today. So I went ahead and added the feedback survey into the chat. Please take a moment to complete our survey about today's webinar that I have just linked for you in the chat. It only takes a minute or so, and your feedback really helps us do more of what is working well and to improve on areas that we need. We invite you to be as candid as you like. This survey is anonymous. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. This will also be with Linnell. It will be Organizational Diagnostics Enhancing Housing Services in Native American Communities. That will be October 16th, 2025. And it'll be around the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Awesome. Okay, feel free to access this and any other recording webinars that we have on our Cathedral Webinars archive, now posted on our YouTube channel. Feel free to view them and share them with your colleagues and friends. And please check out our upcoming events posted on our various social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We also have an in-house podcast titled The Hope of Being a Native American Podcast, where we discuss more focused topics within Native American housing and self-determination. You can also listen to us on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, as well as view the video recordings with our guests on YouTube. Once again, we want to thank all our participants for joining us today. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we hope to connect with you real soon. All right, bye, guys.